Hello everyone! Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I make my sourdough. It is so satisfying, it's therapeutic, it is incredible to make and to eat. I'm a busy mom, but I can still incorporate this into my schedule because honestly there's very little actual hands-on time. So it does take a while if you want bread the next day. So if you want bread on Wednesday, you have to start this on Tuesday. What I do first thing in the morning is I take out my sourdough starter. So let's say 7 a.m., 6 a.m., I take out my starter and I feed it. I usually have a tiny bit of starter left from the previous week. I will feed this half a cup of water and half a cup of flour. I mix it with a wooden spoon and I let it rise on the counter until it's doubled in size. So this time it took overnight because it's winter. So I did start last night, but usually I will start this in the morning and from 7 it will be doubled by about 12 or 1. And when it's doubled, you know, your temperature is different than my house. Your climate might be different than mine as well. So right now we're in winter, there's snow outside, it's cold. So that's why it's taking a bit longer to rise. But if you are making this in summer, if you're making this in a warmer climate, I wish I was with you, then it's going to be faster. So just wait till it's doubled. Second step is to auto-loose. Auto-loose is where you combine the flour and the water together and just let it rest. You want it to rest from like 30 minutes, it can be up to 12 hours. So if you would like to do it, you can even do it overnight. You basically want to hydrate the flour really well. That's what auto-loose is. And I have done this and I have skipped it many times. I don't see much of a difference with my final results. So if you want to do this step, you can, and if not, and you're like me and you forget sometimes, then that's totally fine too. Step 3 is to mix all of your ingredients. So you want the sourdough starter, you have the salt, and you have the flour and water. So why I call this a 2-ingredient bread is because the starter is made out of flour and water. Does that count as an ingredient? Well, yeah, but I don't want to say starter because I'm going to say flour. Is water counted in ingredients? Anyway, and then salt. So really you have 4 ingredients with the starter, which is flour and water and then salt, but I just want to say flour and salt because that's really what it is, because the starter is made out of the flour and water. Anyway, does that make sense? You mix all of these ingredients together. Step 4 is to stretch and fold. So after 30 minutes, you're going to go back in there with a wet hand and pick up a side of the dough and fold it in, pick up the side of the dough until you've made a full circle. Step 5 is to let it bulk ferment. So you're gonna leave it on the counter for like 4 to 6 hours. In the summer, I do closer to 4. In the winter, I do closer to 6. And once again, matters on your timing. So if I'm really tired that night, I'm going to put the dough to bed earlier. And if I have some more time, then I'll let it ferment. The more you let it ferment on the counter, the more sour taste you're going to have to your bread. So that's why I don't let it over ferment on the counter. I would rather have it sleep in the fridge and proof there and continue the fermentation over there. If I stopped the stretch and fold process at around 3, I will let the dough sit on the counter till about 7, 8. I will shape the loaves and then I'm going to put it into the fridge for it to sleep there overnight for at least like 12 to 16 hours. And then I'm going to bake it, which is step 6. So we went through the steps. I'm going to show you in great detail of how to do this. This is kind of my schedule. I start at 7 one day and I will finish the next morning and I will have beautiful loaves of bread. It's very satisfying to make. By the way, this recipe makes 2 loaves of bread. So you can share it with your neighbor or freeze it, up to you, or eat it all. Or you just have the recipe and then you're gonna have 1 loaf then. Okay, let's get into it. You're going to need a large bowl to mix all your ingredients in, a scale, a proofing basket, which I absolutely love. I have the real basket, but I really honestly prefer this method with a tea towel, the Dutch oven, and since I always make 2 loaves of bread, I have 2 Dutch ovens, a sharp knife for you to squirt the bread, and a wooden spoon to mix the starter, and a bench scraper to cut the dough in half and to work with it. To make this incredible sourdough bread, you need a sourdough starter, unbleached organic white flour, salt, and filtered warm water. Not hot, warm. This is a very complex bread, so you will need a digital scale and you will have to measure in grams all the time. So right now I'm measuring out 200 grams of starter, but I got a little bit more in the bowl and I'm not going to be fishing it out. It's not going to hurt any bit, so it's totally fine if that happens to you. If there's this much sourdough remaining in my jar, then I'll just put it into the fridge. But if there's this much sourdough remaining in the jar, I will feed it first and then put it into the fridge. And don't worry, it looks like there's nothing in there, but trust me, once you feed it, it's gonna get going a nice starter. I'm adding 20 grams of salt. And everything else I'm measuring out, I'm trying to be very specific about, so it's just the starter that I really don't mind if I go a little bit over or under. And 1,000 grams of flour. You guys are now witnessing me skipping autolues, which is where you hydrate the flour with water, skipping step 2, going straight to step 3, which is where I mix all the ingredients together. I'm going to make a stiff claw hand and start from the middle and work my way out to the sides until you just combined everything, and it's going to create this nice like shaggy dough. It's going to be quite rough, and I'm going to use a rhubarb method, which is basically where you have a stiff scooping hand and you're picking up the side of it and letting it naturally fall. And basically you're scooping, and it's like going up and falling. You will do that for a few minutes until your arm falls off, and then I just get the dough off with my other hand and wash my hands. I will let it rest for 30 minutes and cover it with plastic wrap. 30 minutes later, I am going to start the 4th process, which is the stretch and fold. So I will grab a side of the bread with wet hands. This is very important because it's very sticky. I'm going to pick it up and let it stretch for as much as it lets me. And I'm going to go around in a circle and do that on every side. You're going to stretch and fold 4 times. It's going to take you 2 hours because it's every 30 minutes. This is my 2nd time, and you can already see the activity in the dough. It's changing shape, and why we're doing the stretch and fold in the first place is to develop the gluten strands and for the dough to take its structure. Now I'm doing it for the 3rd time. Sometimes I do it with 2 hands, sometimes I do it with 1 hand. This is honestly really fun and therapeutic. So this is the 4th time, and you can really see how the texture has changed dramatically. I'm trying to show you through the video of how like combined it is, how wet it is, how shiny it is. It's just incredible from the shaggy dough that we've created that it turned into this. After the 4th stretch and fold, it's time to bulk ferment. So I put it into the oven with the light on, with the oven off, and after a few hours, look at this beauty. It has risen incredibly. Like, I'm honestly shocked that this wild yeast can do that. It amazes me every single time, and I make it every week. I hope that you'll enjoy making this as much as I do. Here I have 2 baskets and 2 tea towels that I'm flouring generously. If your dough ever sticks to the plastic wrap like this, just take it off with a bench scraper. Look at that. Now I'm using my hand like a bench scraper, and I'm basically trying to take out the dough in one form. So I don't want it to separate. I want the huge blob to come out on the non-floured work surface. Yes, non-floured work surface together. I grab my bench scraper and I just go at it. I eyeball 2 loaves, so I try to do everything in half. Here you're going to see how I am going a little bit under the dough with a bench scraper, and I am twisting it for the dough to become a circular shape. I am lightly covering the top of the dough with flour, and I'm going to smooth it out with my hand. I don't want any sticky side. And then I'm going to go in with my bench scraper, and working kind of firmly and quickly, I'm going to release the bottom, the non-floured side from the table, and flip it over onto the floured side. Like that. Now I'm going to do an envelope folding. So fold the top over, the side over, and the other side over, and the bottom over, and then I'm gonna flip the entire thing onto the seam that we just made and rotate it and kind of tuck it under. Rotate it, tuck it under. I'm kind of using the grip of the table to help me with this. Once it's ready, I'm going to load it seam side up into my proofing basket. I'm going to do the same exact thing to the other dough. I'm going to quickly release the dough from the table and then flip it over onto the floured side. It is very hard to do this because the dough is very wet and sticky. That is why I advise beginners to have less water in their dough for them to get used to the wet feeling and the whole process itself. I always use the bench scraper to scrape off any excess of flour that I have on my table. It helps me so much because, you know, the rags get all doughy and everything, so this is a perfect way to clean up afterwards. The last step of the day is to put your doughs to bed. I put them in a large garbage bag and close it tightly so that they won't dry out, and I put it in the fridge overnight. Well, good morning. You are almost there. I am so proud of you. Put your Dutch ovens into the oven and preheat the oven to 500 degrees. Yes, 500. You want it to be blazing hot. To score the bread, I picked up these razors. They're super sharp and they work well for me, but you can use a bread lame or a sharp knife. Here's what the dough looks like. Now, onto a floured work surface. I'm going to carefully put the dough onto my table. So I do that, I have my hand kind of helping me, and then I let the dough rest on the table, and I will carefully take the cloth off. If your tea towels are new, you're going to need to flour them generously, or if you just wash them, they need that flour. I usually let mine dry out. I don't wash them every time. I am squaring the bread right before I put it into the oven. You need to square it, at least do one line down the middle. You don't have to do anything fancy, but the bread will rise in the oven. So if there is no scoring, it will find its own weak spot and kind of be deformed as it rises in that area. Now, the part that we've all been waiting for is to see the final result. So we're almost there. Now that my Dutch ovens are really hot, I will take off the lids. The lids are very necessary because they capture the steam inside and allow the sourdough to rise. This is the hardest part for me because I don't want to get burned and I don't want to mess up the dough. So I am doing as I've done before, and I am releasing the dough with a bench scraper by going under it in a circle, taking my other hand, carrying it, and putting my hands into the ripping hot cast iron. So I am doing that now with the second one and also carrying it with my hands. It's very wobbly, very unstable, but you gotta work fast, and I believe in you. You can do this. Now I am tightly closing the lids so that no steam will escape and putting it in the 500-degree oven for 20 minutes. I put away my proofing station by just tossing the towels over the baskets, kind of hanging them over it and letting them kind of dry out that way and putting it back in spot. Cleaning up the flour for the very last time and then letting my kids out of the closet. Did I mention they were in there? I always try to have them in a safe place while I'm opening the oven. During the first 20 minutes of the bake is when the dough will rise. Right now I'm going to take off the lids. The dough has risen quite a bit. That is going to be its final shape, but now we need to let all the goodness inside continue to bake and for the crusty crust to develop the deep golden color that we're looking for. So bake for another 15 to 20 minutes at 475 degrees, and that's going to be a total for 35 to 40 minutes. Even though I make sourdough bread every single week, it is still exciting. It is incredibly satisfying to make something with your own hands. It's a work of art, and I love to make it and I love to eat it. My breads just pop out like that, and I'm very thankful to God that I have this opportunity to teach it to my kids. My kids love to be involved. They love to eat it. They always say this is their favorite bread, and it's mine as well. I can see why. Yeah, those are the beauties. They have a very deep flavor in the crust, a very soft, chewy interior. It's very moist. It's a different texture than any other bread that you're going to try. It's very, very satisfying. And guess what step 7 is? I didn't mention it before because it might be the hardest. You have to wait a whole hour before cutting into it. Yes, you heard me. But the remaining heat inside of the loaves bakes the rest of the loaves fully, and you have to let it escape naturally. If you cut it in too early, it's going to be all gummy, and you don't want that. Look how beautiful. The texture is just undescribable. It's so stretchy, it's flexible. I mean, the structure is incredible. The taste is outstanding. It is definitely my favorite bread. If you have any questions about the whole process, anything, please ask it to me. I'm going to try to answer everyone that I can according to my knowledge. I mean, I've been doing this for like almost 3 years. So yes, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you tried this recipe and these techniques, and may God bless you to make a just fabulous bread, a fabulous work of art to feed your family. I am so excited for you. Let me know how it turns out.